Live stream audio test. 1 2 1 2. Live stream audio test. 1 2 1 2.
Right. Good evening, everybody. I think it's about 6 o'clock, so let's be prompt and start our meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone who is here. I'd like to welcome people who are watching on Teams and even those who are watching on the live stream. Everybody is very welcome, and I am so pleased to see a room full of people who are interested in what we're doing tonight. I have a few announcements myself about things that I've been doing since we last met. I much appreciate the invitations to attend events as your representative, some of which I could attend, and many thanks to Catherine Gibbons, who attended the event at Wells Cathedral to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, which I couldn't attend. I also attended my own local armistice parade on Sunday and went to Nailsea Station this morning to see North Somerset's Reef go off to London. I also attended an event at Nailsea's Tithe Barn as part of Black History Month. It was a great event. We were reminded of Hannah More's connection to the Tithe Barn, where she set up a school, and it was interesting to be reminded what a remarkable woman she was. She was probably one of the first influencers, and it was particularly important to hear as she was particularly important in helping the abolitionist movement. And that was at a time when women's voices were hardly ever heard. And it seems strange to think that half the world's population were women, but mostly their contributions were not noticed. But Hannah More was not one of those. The main event of the evening was the story of how the words of the song Amazing Grace became written and the story behind them. And thanks to Dave Francis, who organised the event. Lastly, on our Christmas event, I haven't received that many replies to your invitation. I know some of you can't come, and I understand it's Christmas time and you're all engaged in all sorts of other things, but it would be lovely to see a few more people coming to that event. And as it's to celebrate people who serve our communities, do feel, bring along a guest who you know does serve your community. It would be really good to just fill the room with a time to rejoice at Christmas. Now, on to the main business of the evening. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've received advance apologies from Councillors Bird, Ellis, Williams and Young.
Thank you. And, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And also, Councillor Richard Tucker, please.
And
Councillor Mike Solomon. Councillor Snaden is on his way, but yet again, he finishes work at 5:30 and he's caught in the western traffic.
yeah, and it was particularly bad when I came in, and that was quite a bit early.
Me too.
Thank you.
Solomon is with us, but online.
And Councillor Solomon is with us, but he's online. And are there any declarations of disposable pecuniary interest this evening about any of the items on the agenda? None? Okay. So on to item 4, the minutes. Can I approve the minutes of the 16th of September as a true record of the meeting that we held? Yes? Okay. Everybody agreed? Carried. Thank you very much. And now the leader is going to present the forward plan.
Thank you, Chair. Move the forward plan for noting.
Thank you. Everybody note that? Everybody read it? That's an important document, our work in progress, as it were. The draft municipal calendar for 2026 and 27 is part of the papers.
Nothing to add to the written report, Madam Chairman, just for councillors to move and hopefully accept.
And do we all accept that those will be the dates for the forthcoming meetings?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. and over to the Chief Executive's announcements.
Thank you very much. As members will know, the Section 151 role is being split from the Director of Corporate Services and Transformation posts. I'm pleased to say that recruitment to the Director post is at an advanced stage, and I hope to make an announcement shortly. Meanwhile, the Section 151 role will be taken over by Mel Watts on the 1st of December. This will entail some updates to the Constitution, where delegations will need to be split between the Section 151 and Director roles. Council is asked to instruct the monitoring officer to make the necessary changes and updates. Before I finish, I want to say this is Amy Webb, our current Director of Corporate Services. This is her last council meeting. Amy has been with us since 2021 and has seen us through the post-COVID era and some challenging times, and always had strong, firm leadership, which is borne out recently in the recent SITFA report that you would have seen access to. But Amy has also been at the forefront of our leadership around some of our new ways of working and our joint arrangements with DELT and setting up our own environmental company as well. So I'd like to express and record, if you don't mind, Chair, our thanks to Amy as she moves on, and we wish her every success in the future.
And I'm sure that's echoed by everybody in the room, so all the very best, Amy. Good to see you on your way. I think you'll be well remembered for a very long time. Right, over to the public now, public participation. We have 6 members of the public who would like to address us tonight, which is absolutely fantastic. We really like to hear from our members. Can I remind them that they have 5 minutes each to speak? So you'll be reminded after about 4 or so that to draw your speech to a close, but we really look forward to seeing you. And I'm sorry I only met Steve at the beginning because some of you arrived after I did, but, personally I do like to meet people if I can beforehand, and I'm sorry I couldn't tonight. But Steve, you're going to be our number 1, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members of the Exec and councillors. I'm Steve Voller, Chair of Banmore Parish Council, here to speak to you this evening about the proposals on Winscombe Library in terms of potentially closing it. We're confident the solution will represent value for money and that it will mean a library service is retained in the area. So who said that? That is a loaded question. It was in 2012 by North Somerset Council after announcing the closure of Banmore Library and that funds would instead be concentrated on Winscombe Library. Obviously, circumstances change over the years, but the hollowing out of rural services isn't always in one noticeable swoop, but can instead be death by 1,000 cuts, literally in this potential case. However, Banmore Parish Council recognises the significant financial challenges facing North Somerset Council and appreciates the need to review how local services are delivered, including within the library network itself. However, having said that, we do not support the closure of Winscombe Library. This facility serves not only the residents of Winscombe, but also neighbouring rural communities, including Banmore. NSC's data actually suggests that up to a third of the borrowers within Winscombe Library are from outside of the immediate vicinity of Winscombe itself. And that stretches as far as obviously Banwell, where 6% of the borrowers are from Banwell itself, and also reaches into, interestingly enough, even into Weston-super-Mare. Residents appreciate the breadth of services in Winscombe that Banwell's mobile library provision, which we currently have, understandably can't provide. It represents the nearest physical library for many of our residents, and its loss would have a considerable impact on local services. Winscombe and the surrounding villages lack alternative, accessible library provision. For those without private transport, travelling to Weston-super-Mare is not, I'm afraid, a practical option. Closure risks excluding many residents from vital services such as books, digital resources, warm spaces, community activities, which support literacy, inclusion and well-being. We're particularly concerned the proposed closure disproportionately affects rural communities, undermining efforts to maintain equitable access to public services across North Somerset. So please withhold that final 1,000th cut and prevent the death of our library service. Thank you. And on a more positive note, and with my personal hat on, not as the Chair of Banwell Parish Council, thank you for all the hard work that's going on in the bypass. It's all on target. Thank you very much for that. And we're looking forward to opening in 2027. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. A bit of bad news and a bit of good news. Thank you for finishing on the good. Right, and now Archie Forbes, a resident, would also like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Archie Forbes and I'm Chair of Winscombe and Sandford Parish Council. The Parish Council held an extraordinary meeting to discuss the proposed closure of Winscombe Library. The Parish Council conducted a consultation meeting also. We've carried out our own survey which shows there is strong public support for maintaining library services in our parish. We have concerns regarding the accuracy of the usage data for Winscombe Library due to the malfunction of the access doors for out-of-hours service. This technical failure is likely to underrepresent the actual demand and usage. There is also a social and well-being aspect attributed to Winscombe Library service. Winscombe Library serves as more than a place of borrowing books. It serves as a warm place for residents every day and a welcoming hub which combats loneliness and social isolation, particularly among vulnerable groups in the parish. It's also important for computer and printing services. There is also an economic impact on local businesses, as users of the library also use the local shops, the pub and other food outlets on Woodborough and Sandford roads. The library also serves several surrounding parishes and many elderly local residents. Removing this local resource risks deepening rural and age-related inequalities. We realise that North Somerset Council has a legal duty under the Public Libraries and Museums Act 1964, but providing a mobile library every week or two does not cover all the local services that Winscombe Library currently provides. We would like to thank Banwell Parish Council very much for their support on this matter. There is clear support for Winscombe Library to stay open, and we are requesting that North Somerset continues to fund the Winscombe Library. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think the loss of any library is quite a tragedy, and you make some very good points, and unfortunately we find ourselves in this situation where we have to discuss these things. So thank you very much for talking to us. David Sims.
Hello, I'm David Sims. I'm from Clevedon. I'm from Books on the Hill. I've attended several NSC meetings over the last 18 months on the Council's proposals to impose on-street parking charges in the Hill Road area. I'm hoping that today councillors will open their minds to the concerns we raise and change the direction you're currently going on. The Hill Road area has no car parks and relies solely on on-street parking, so NSC's proposal will cause considerable footfall loss, which will result in serious damage to the viability of all the independent shops and cafes in this special area. However, the thrust of my message today is not to repeat my continuing grave concern for the future of our family bookshop and the shops of our fellow independent traders, but rather to highlight the numerous failures of North Somerset Council's process, governance and decision-making that has so far robbed citizens of their right and expectation that NSC will implement initiatives in a fair, legal manner that delivers value for money and supports proper standards and ethics. I highlight four main areas of flawed process. Area 1, purpose and business case. The specific business case for the imposition of Hill Road on-street parking charges has not been articulated and shared with the public. Indeed, I'm not even sure if councillors have seen this particular Hill Road business case. The statements from council leadership that explicitly link parking charges to raising revenue and avoiding a Section 114 notice suggest that the Hill Road business case, if it exists, may indeed be based on an unlawful purpose, as under the Road Traffic Regulation Act 1984, Parking charges can only be used for traffic management, not to generate income and plug budget gaps. This very important fundamental flaw is highlighted by Councillor Caniford's words in an email. Quote, "Just to be completely open, this is also in part a decision based on the financial restraints the Council finds itself in and the need to raise income." Unquote. This motivation to plug budget gaps with on-street parking charges indicates North Somerset's on-street parking charges plan for Hill Road is ultra-virus, beyond your legal power. Area 2. Specific fact-based traffic management reasons and evidence for imposition of on-street parking charges in Hill Road have not been shared. Indeed, it is highly likely that such data and evidence does not in fact exist. At one specific meeting, a question was asked in this room, a question was asked on my behalf to an officer what specific traffic management data underpinned the Hill Road proposals. And the answer was a couple of drive-bys. Despite numerous requests, no traffic or parking data for the Hill Road area has been provided to justify the TRO. Indeed, a recent NSC Planning Officer report in September 2025 makes a statement about Hill Road parking, quote, "Whilst it is known that the spaces are well used, there is a high turnover of spaces throughout the day," unquote. This formal statement from NSC Planning directly contradicts earlier councillor assertions that Hill Road and Alexandra Road suffer from low turnover of cars. NSC is trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist whilst harming businesses. Area 3. The consultation process has not really been a genuine consultation process, with a desire to listen, and the whole process has lacked transparency and not gained public confidence. In spring 2024, over 3,000 signed a petition against Hill Road charges. In September 2025, over 600 formal objections were submitted to the TRO. In October 2025, over 60 businesses wrote to the new CEO to outline their concerns and asked for the CEO to investigate. She's not replied. Businesses and residents feel ignored and misled, undermining confidence in the local democratic process. That's why today we're presenting a new petition with over 4,500 signatures. Area 4. On a very technical point, the Council has failed to reconsult on a material change with regards to any free parking allowance. This technical error, acknowledged by the Cabinet Member for Highways as an error, means that the public consultation was not based on the full and correct proposals, denying respondents the legal right to comment on the actual scheme. This is a breach of the local authority's traffic orders, procedure regulations 1996 and renders the consultation invalid. NSC must withdraw the existing TRO for the Hill Road area. Councillors, please think carefully how you can demonstrate vividly that the NSC strategy, which promises to revitalise and support our retail streets, making them more vibrant and enticing, really does apply to Clevedon. Listen to the businesses, customers and the residents of the Hill Road area and reconsider the direction you're taking. Engage now with officers to challenge and understand the enormity of the mistakes you have already made and are about to make that will harm a very, very special part of North Somerset. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, David. And Tristan Merriman, you would also like to address us.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening in relation to the proposed implementation of paid on-street parking in Clevedon. My name is Tristan Merriam and I'm the owner of Doghead Designs on Hill Road. I specialise in painted furniture and artistry, design and craftsmanship. I teach workshops here and all over the world, helping others to learn these creative skills and build their confidence. Over the years, I've been fortunate to feature on BBC television, which has brought attention not just to my work, but to Clevedon itself. Furthermore, my shop also supports other local makers and artists, showcasing their work, giving them space to sell and helping to nurture our town's creative community. When I first started Doghead Designs, it was in a rural location, Clevedon Craft Centre. Small, tucked away and hard to find. I worked incredibly hard to build something from nothing. After years of effort, I made the decision to move to Hill Road because I believed in what this community stands for: independent spirit, creativity and local pride. I chose Clevedon for a reason. I wanted to be part of a thriving, independent area, a place where locals and visitors could stroll, browse and discover something unique. and it's worked. My shop has flourished here. Doghead Designs isn't just a local name. I've been fortunate enough to build an international following and attract customers from across the country, even from abroad, many who visit Clevedon specifically because of my work and reputation. That means people coming here, parking here, and spending money not just in my shop, but in cafes, other shops, and across the whole town. But this proposal to introduce paid on-street parking where my business is will undo so much of that progress. My business, like so many independents, relies on passing footfall, people who pop in while they're walking their dog, running errands, or visiting other shops. If parking becomes paid, that spontaneous footfall will drop. People will think twice about stopping. They'll go somewhere else, somewhere free, somewhere easier. And the reality is, in spite of the pride that I feel for everything I've achieved, business is tough at the moment. Costs are up, spending is down, and many of us are just about keeping our heads above water. Introducing parking charges now feels like a blow we simply cannot absorb. This isn't just about convenience, it's about livelihoods, mine and many others. It's about the independent identity of Clevedon, something fragile, special, and worth protecting. I can't honestly understand why, when independent businesses are already struggling, the council isn't doing everything possible to support us, rather than introducing something that will undoubtedly have a detrimental impact on our businesses and would unquestionably lead to many being forced to close. Every single drop in footfall counts. Every single lost customer makes a difference. Doghead Designs has grown up since coming to Clevedon. It's where my business truly found its home and its community. To introduce parking charges now would feel like cutting it off right when it's at its prime, right when it's thriving and bringing attention, energy, and pride to this town. I'm not standing here as someone angry or unreasonable. I'm standing here as someone who cares deeply about Clevedon, who has invested their heart, time, and life into building something that contributes to this town's character and economy. Please think about what's at stake, not just for me, but for every independent business that makes Clevedon what it is. Wouldn't it be refreshing for us to know that the people in charge of making these decisions aren't taking the easy road and that we're being heard and supported from the top down? Doing the right thing and the easy thing aren't always the same thing. What do we really want Hill Road and the surrounding area to look like 5 years from now? Boarded up? Empty units everywhere? Sadly, this is the inevitable should you proceed with this scheme. Paid parking might look like a small policy change on paper, but in reality, it risks undoing years of hard work, creativity, and community spirit. It is my opinion that this proposal is short-sighted and would cause the local councils to lose money. Thank you for listening and for considering the real people behind the shop fronts of our high street.
Thank you, Kristen. And Devon. Welcome.
Okay. Good evening, councillors. My name is Devon Wilshire-Day and I run So Gorgeous Bridal in Clevedon alongside my mum. For many towns across the country, long gone are the days where local shopping streets were thriving. I remember popping into Weston Town Centre as a child and my family being so excited to visit all the lovely shops, go out for lunch at a cafe and potter around, have a chat to strangers about everything and anything. Most of the businesses that we used to visit, sadly, no longer exist. When my mum started our business back in 2010, we knew Well High Street was the place to be. It still had that real community feel, with local independents, banks, cafes and more. Holidaymakers and locals would travel through Well on their way to Weston Town Centre and stop off along the way. The footfall was huge. But over the 14 years that we were there, we watched things change drastically. A combination of things happened. Parking charges were introduced in Weston Town Centre, and we believe this drove people to Bristol instead. Online shopping became the go-to, with almost everything available for next-day delivery at cheaper prices. The cost of living crisis hit, and then COVID. Not many of us were still standing after that. We've seen banks close, businesses go under, and yet, as independents, we strive on to survive day by day, week by week, month by month. We don't choose the walk of an independent business owner to become millionaires, although that would be lovely. We choose it because we have heart and passion, because we love being part of and serving our community, connecting with people and keeping alive trades that are slowly disappearing. In 2024, we moved to Hill Road in Clevedon. We knew that if our business was going to survive, we needed to be somewhere that offered customers an experience. Because shopping locally isn't about what you buy, it's about the whole day out. It's about going for coffee, lunch, browsing through incredible local shops and feeling inspired again. We joined Sandy and Fenella, who've run a beautiful independent gallery for 20 years. Sue and Steve, who have offered amazing coffee and haircuts for 9 years. CJ, who opened her children's shop on the very same street her late mum once ran a business, keeping her connection to her mother alive. Ruben, who owns Murray's, a gorgeous family-run restaurant and deli that's been running for over 40 years, and the Rossiter family, whose jewellers have stood proudly on that same street since 1832, nearly 200 years. This is what makes Hill Road and towns like Clevedon so special. It is something the internet simply can't compete with. But what happens when you introduce parking charges in areas like this? People stop coming. It's a fact. Because right now, everything feels expensive. And when life costs so much already, it's easier and cheaper to stay at home and order online. Instead of paying £3 for a coffee and a browse, it becomes £6. Instead of paying £20 for a toy from CJ's shop, it becomes leaving the house, paying for travel, paying for the toy, and paying for parking on top. Even a quick lunch becomes something you have to think about twice. And what happens then? The pockets of billionaires, soon to be trillionaires, may I add, continue to be lined with our local residents' hard-earned cash, instead of the money circulating back into the local community. It goes to America, not Clevedon. It's a death sentence for small independents, and it's already happening all over the country. So we ask you kindly but firmly to please reconsider this decision. Don't let one of the few remaining heritage shopping areas full of incredible independent businesses become a thing of the past. We simply won't survive another hit. We are not a city like Bristol with hundreds of thousands of residents and excellent transport links, and we're not Weston, a destination town with constant visitors and big seaside events. We are Clevedon, a small town that many have never heard of that relies almost entirely on its local community for support. In our area, 35% of the population are over 65. They would be at a real risk of isolation if parking meters are introduced. And for those who visit from out of town, it's our quirky, independent businesses that give them a reason to come. Without this reason disappears. I couldn't be any more frank if I tried. As a community of local independents, we will not survive this. So please reconsider this decision. Help us protect our incredible community. Help us keep our heritage shopping streets alive, full of real people, real stories, and a real love for what we do. Please stop the on-street parking charges going ahead, because you won't get that care, that passion, or that personal touch from Jeff Bezos. And if the charges go ahead, Clevedon will never be the same.
Thank you, Devon. And Sandy Prater. Is Sandy here? Hello, Sandy.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for letting me speak this evening. My name is Sandy Prater, and I own and run Fizz Gallery on Hill Road in Clevedon. This evening, I'm speaking on behalf of all of the independent businesses in that area. Over the past few months, our business community has been forced to rally together in response to North Somerset Council's proposed on-street parking charges. Let me set the scene. In 2021, COVID hit us hard. Many of us are still paying the loans that we took out simply to survive. Then in April 2022, North Somerset decided that the area was to be changed to a one-way system to create a cycle lane, a lane that is short, disconnected, and ultimately goes nowhere. These works were meant to take 3 months. They took more than 6. During that time, my business alone saw a drop of 60% in revenue, and I know that other businesses suffered the same. Then came the seafront debacle. The wiggly lines appeared, the shifting road layouts, cars facing west, then north, then west again, cycle lanes built, moved and rebuilt. Residents said clearly from the start, don't do this. But North Somerset Council didn't listen. Now 1.96 million of taxpayers' money later, That's not North Somerset's money, that's our money, the public that you work on behalf of. Footfall has never recovered since these changes, and this is fact, not speculation. Now in 2025, North Somerset Council proposes on-street parking charges for the retail area of Hill Road and the surrounding roads. Again, the community responded immediately. This morning, Councillor Pryke submitted the data from our latest petition, launched on the 10th of October. In just 32 days, we have collected over 2,700 signatures of support online and 1,864 in-shop signatures. That's over 4,500 in total. 62% of those signatures online are from BS postcodes. They are our customers. The paper petition is full of comments saying, I won't come if charges are introduced, and why are North Somerset Council not supporting these businesses that are so important? This is not vague opinion, this is real-world feedback from the very people who sustain our local economy. On top of this, North Somerset Council received more than 400 formal objections to the proposals. These are not people objecting for the sake of it. They are residents, visitors from neighbouring villages and day trippers telling you plainly if charges come in, they either won't come as often or will go to out-of-town shopping centres where parking is free. Look at other towns that have introduced charges: Thornbury, Winterbourne, Lymington, Newton, Worthing, Cardigan, Newquay, all reporting a decline in their shopping areas, footfall down, shops closing. Closer to home, Nailsea has had charges inflicted on their car parks earlier this year, and already 3 shops have announced that they will be not renewing their leases next year. Is that what you really want for this special part of Clevedon? We're not the posh shops on the hill or the hobby shops of days gone by. We are ordinary people running ordinary businesses, employing local staff, contributing to the town's economy. For many of us, like mine, our business is our only income and pays our mortgages. And let's be honest, the timing is as worse as it could possibly be. National retail is on its knees. Costs rising, customers not spending as much.
1 more minute.
I run my business on Hill Road for 20 years, and I can honestly say this is the most worried I've ever been about the future, more so than in the 2008 recession. Independent businesses don't need more barriers, we need support. Councillor Bell stated, and I quote, "We have tried to listen to the feedback and make changes where we can. The proposed on-street locations of Portishead High Street, Clevedon Triangle and Nailsea High Street have been removed from the scope of the proposals. So where is the support for Clevedon?" We're not asking for handouts, we're asking for sensible, fair and evidence-based policy. And we want to be absolutely clear about this. We want proper enforcement of the existing 2-hour parking limit, not parking charges. So tonight, I'm asking you, please listen. Do not make this another disaster. Hear the thousands of voices behind us. Hear the businesses, the residents, the very people who make up the local economy. Please make the right decision.
Thank you, Sandy. Well, I think all of the public speakers have given us food for thought, which is very important. So thank you all for coming. And it would be callous of us if we didn't wish you well, because particularly those of us who shop at Hill Road, we do appreciate the hard work you've done. So we'll see how things progress. And we have a petition by one of our members on this very subject. So, Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here tonight proudly as the member for Clevedon Walton, because you have just heard 4 of my businesses give out their own personal story and tell you precisely why it is these parking charges are not required. 4,351 residents, traders, visitors, all saying the same thing: stop the parking charges. Hill Road, Alexandra Road, Bellevue Road, they're not just some other street. This is the heart of Clevedon's community. lined with our independent shops and cafes and small businesses that give Clevedon its identity. These are not some big chains with deep pockets. They are local people who have spent years of their time and their savings and their hopes investing into the town of Clevedon. And now they're being hit with parking charges. They didn't ask for it. The locals certainly don't support it. It's just appeared out of nowhere. Councillor Caniford, you've said that these charges will improve turnover. They're going to make things fairer. What they're really improving is the number of people who will be turning over their engines and driving somewhere else. You say you want to make parking better, but an empty parking space outside an empty shop isn't good management. It's failure with a pay and display label all over it. But we've been here before with Clevedon. The Clevedon Seafront scheme was supposed to make things better. Instead, it made national headlines for all the wrong reasons. Confusing layouts, lost trade, angry residents. That project was a lesson in what happens when the council stops listening to its community. Hill Road is your second chance to get it right. Don't turn another part of Clevedon into a fiasco. Because once again, local people are shouting from the rooftops, and once again, it feels like no one at North Somerset Council is listening. Councillor Caniford, the traders of Hill Road aren't asking for special treatment. They're asking for fairness, for common sense, for decisions that help our high streets, not harm them. Yet you can still change course. Pause these charges, speak to the businesses, find a solution that works for the town and not just for your spreadsheets. Because when a council's meters are more responsive than its cabinet members, frankly, something's gone horribly wrong. Clevedon deserves a heck of a lot better than another council catastrophe. It deserves people that listen. So let's learn from the seafront and let's not repeat it. Let's stand with these Hill Road traders and stop these parking charges.
Thank you, Councillor Pryke. Thank you. And you have a petition with how many names were on it?
It is with 4,351 residents.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's over 4,500 now because they keep coming in.
Oh. Right. Mark, will you accept it on our behalf? Thank you very much indeed. Right, item 10. We're going to have a presentation by the community group, the North Somerset Citizens Advice Bureau now, but in order for that, we need to suspend standing orders. Are there anyone who objects to us doing that for a while? No. Okay, so over to Holly, who's going to do a little presentation for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to speak tonight. So I am going to show a picture of where pressures are concentrated across North Somerset, what's driving those pressures and what that means for how we support local residents. The aim is to build a shared understanding of where early, coordinated support could make the biggest difference. We're going to start, oh, it does work, good. And we'll start with looking at the index of multiple deprivation. So this is newly released data from the 30th of October. And for anyone that's not aware, the IMD is a national measure that pulls together 7 different domains that you can see on your screen there to measure deprivation. It does that using small neighbourhoods or LSOAs, which cover about 1,500 residents or 650 households. And then each of those areas is given a decile score. So 1 meaning the most disadvantaged 10% in England, and 10 meaning the 10% least disadvantaged. So it's a measure of place-based pressures. And we're going to have a look at where those pressures are currently concentrated and where they've deepened since 2019. So we will start with the overall picture of where disadvantage is most concentrated in North Somerset. So the darker colours on the map here are areas that rank among the most deprived nationally, the lighter shades showing less deprivation. So we've created these maps specifically for this meeting, mainly using the IMD data, and we'll share these with you afterwards because they are at their best using the interactive links where you can zoom right down to street level. You can click on the different areas to see more information pop up and explore patterns in your own ward. We do also have a quarterly cost of living dashboard which focuses on citizens' advice data, which I'll also share with you. But I thought kind of area ward-based would be more interesting for you to have a look at tonight. So now that we've had a quick look at where pressures are most concentrated, let's look at one of the ways that pressure shows up in daily life: the cost of heating and energy. So this isn't actually IMD data, this is fuel poverty data published this year, although the information is actually from 2023, because sometimes that's how long it takes data to come through. So fuel poverty is one of the clearest indicators of cost of living pressure. And it's not just about income, it's also about the energy efficiency of homes and whether people can afford to keep those homes warm. The average fuel poverty rate in North Somerset is 8.8%, but some areas are significantly worse off than that. There are areas of Central Ward where 22.7% of households live in fuel poverty. In Blagdon, it's just over 15%. And the neighbourhoods that we see high rates of fuel poverty are often the same areas where we see high levels of the IMD deprivation that we saw on the previous map, reinforcing that deprivation, housing quality and energy costs are deeply interconnected. Now we're going to have a quick look at how income deprivation isn't experienced the same across all age groups. Firstly, we will have a look. Sorry, there's a little delay on my clicker. Firstly, we'll have a look at comparing on the left, you've got the IMD map, and on the right, you've got income deprivation affecting older people. That's people aged 60 and over. And what's striking here is that while overall deprivation is most concentrated in Weston-super-Mare on the income deprivation affecting older people measure, it does also show up in villages and rural wards across the county where housing costs, heating and transport add to financial strain. And that pattern really aligns with what we hear from older clients who may be asset rich but cash poor, living in older homes that are hard to heat, and unfortunately often reluctant to seek support until crisis point has been reached. Here's an interesting example from Portishead East. So on the IMD map on the left, this area ranks as 7 out of 10, so amongst the least deprived areas nationally. But on the right, when we isolate income deprivation affecting older people, the same LSOA ranks as 2 out of 10, placing it among the most deprived 20% in England for older residents. So it's showing us that while Portishead East appears relatively prosperous overall, many older residents are struggling financially. So a reminder that deprivation is not evenly distributed within communities, even in areas that may be considered affluent. There are pockets of vulnerability. Here we've got the IMD map on the left again, and then income deprivation affecting children on the right. That is the proportion of children aged 0 to 15 living in households in a low income. Again, while many of the same neighbourhoods appear on both maps, you can see that income deprivation affecting children is often more concentrated and more severe, indicating that deeper pressure on families. Now we're going to shift our focus to look at how things are changing. And this map shows where pressures have deepened since 2019. So the areas in purple and dark red are areas that have become more deprived since 2019. That's the last time the IMD data was published. The orange and yellow areas have become less deprived, and the grey areas have stayed broadly the same, which isn't always good news, as in some cases this means areas that remain in the most 10% most deprived areas in England. And you can see here that change isn't evenly spread. We've got some rural and semi-rural areas such as Rington and Blagdon that have seen a worsening in relative deprivation. For us, this map emphasises how economic pressures and cost of living pressures are reshaping what we experience as need across the district. It's not just a story of long-term deprivation in a few neighbourhoods, but we're seeing new pockets of vulnerability emerging alongside entrenched need. The white areas, by the way, are LSOAs that didn't exist in 2019, so we couldn't compare those. Now we're going to move from where deprivation is concentrated to why. So thinking about the environmental and structural barriers that stack on top of those financial pressures make it much harder for individuals and families to cope. My clicker will work. So here we're looking at employment deprivation, so the proportion of working age adults who would like to work but are unable to due to things like sickness, disability or caring responsibilities. And what this map highlights is that worklessness and economic exclusion remain key drivers of deprivation locally. Even though overall employment in North Somerset is relatively high, there are clear pockets where people are disconnected from the labour market, often due to long-term health conditions or things like lack of affordable childcare. And for us, that's really important in the context of the cost of living, because in many of the same areas where people struggle to find work, they're also facing high energy costs and poor quality housing, alongside other aspects of housing deprivation, which we'll have a look at here. So another driver is the quality of the places that people live. So living environment, this is looking inside at things like housing conditions and energy efficiency, and outdoors, things like air quality, traffic accidents and noise pollution. And what's striking here is that some of the areas showing the highest deprivation in terms of living environment aren't those that appear the most deprived in the overall IMD. So as an example, parts of Long Ashton, Gordano Valley and some rural villages show a higher deprivation here, often linked to older housing stock and poor insulation. And from a wider determinants of health perspective, this really matters because poor housing and environmental quality drive health inequalities, and they also increase the cost of living, especially where those people are spending more to heat inefficient homes. This is also important because it doesn't just affect household finances, it also affects well-being. And the final IMD map that we'll look at here is the wider barriers subdomain. So this is more about things like housing affordability, overcrowding, homelessness, and even includes measures like broadband speed and GP capacity. What's important about this measure of deprivation is that it's about access, not just income poverty. So for example, people may be working, but still unable to find affordable housing or timely healthcare. From a cost of living perspective, these barriers compound other forms of deprivation. So when people are already under financial pressure, limited access to services or secure housing makes their recovery or their resilience to crisis much harder. And that's where early advice and local coordination can make a real difference. So we've seen where the pressures are concentrated and some of the drivers behind that. The final map shows how that's translating into the people that we help, specifically with the key cost of living issues, so personal independence payment, energy, council tax arrears, crisis support and homelessness. And what we can see here is a clear link, but not a perfect overlap. So the areas where we support the highest number of residents with cost of living issues are also those experiencing some of the most persistent and deep-rooted disadvantage. But we've also seen that need isn't static and it is changing. Some neighbourhoods have become more disadvantaged and show up differently across the country. So this map here isn't just a picture of where crisis is, but it's also a picture of where crisis is emerging. And that's, I think, the opportunity. By combining insights like this with those held across the council, health, other community partners, we can build a shared, forward-looking understanding of need, not just a retrospective one. So the insights we've shared with you today are just one small part of the picture, a small snapshot of what we can see through our advice demand and some recently published national deprivation data. But every service in the system holds insights into different pressures. Housing teams see very different pressures to GPs, schools see emerging challenges earlier than a lot of services, and voluntary and community groups are often the first to see things change on the ground. If we bring those insights together, we can anticipate need, and that will help us focus limited resource where they will prevent crisis, not just respond to it. That means supporting people earlier, both in the neighbourhoods already experiencing deep disadvantage and in the places where pressures are now emerging, but perhaps haven't yet become visible to many services. We're already part of the JSNA conversations, and the first co-design workshop there recognised something really important, and that is for that data to help the council and everyone surrounding you respond effectively, it needs to become more timely, more neighbourhood level, and more grounded in real lived experience. Citizens' advice can actively support that shift. Our data is real-time, issue-specific, and rooted in what residents are experiencing day to day. And if we bring that data together with other services, we can develop a shared, place-based, early warning approach. We can see where pressures are building so we can act before crisis hits. So what we've shared tonight is a picture of where pressures are being felt most strongly and where they're changing. And we see our role as bringing that lived real-time insight from people who are navigating those pressures every day. We'll continue to share as part of the JSNA work and any wider partnership discussions, and we'll share our cost of living dashboard and these interactive maps with you tomorrow, hopefully. We really do recognise the challenging financial context that the council's working within, and that when resources are tight, early action and coordination become even more important. So we really hope that the data that we've shared today and that we're happy to talk about and share in the future can help you focus your support, investment and prevention work. Thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Holly, for the really good presentation. And I know colleagues will really welcome the opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into some of the slides and the data, some of which absolutely falls into the not surprising category, I think, because some of the entrenched deprivation that we see across North Somerset, I think we're all too familiar with, but some of it definitely fits into the surprising category, and I think the shifts that you see articulated there are really different. I guess the two questions I've got are firstly, and this might be a difficult one to answer, but if there was one thing that you think the council could do differently that would make a difference, and it could be a big strategic thing, or it could be a smaller thing, what would that be? And secondly, how do you think we can be more effective in working with organisations like Citizens Advice North Somerset, particularly to make the case for our community? Because one of the things that really leaps out from the data is that some of our communities are deprived and have been deprived for a long time, and it's not getting better. And if we're going to turn the page on that, that is going to require investment over a longer period of time and doing something differently. And whilst we've got the Pride in Place programme funding for the Greater Bourneville area, what it doesn't do is address the challenges in South Ward, in Uphill, in Pill, and in other places where we know we've also got those entrenched challenges. And at a time when, as you rightly say, local authorities are finding it harder and harder to fund that early intervention and prevention and interventionist work, we do need others, charitable sector, voluntary sector, but certainly government, to step up.
So to answer your first question, I think it would be very useful to coordinate true data sharing so we can actually be creating our own risk indexes, putting things together and really working out where specific needs are showing up. So services, not just the council but others, know where they need to target their limited resources to the best of their ability. And hopefully that's a fairly low cost thing to do as well. For your other question, I think it's certainly an aspiration for Citizens Advice North Somerset to really be investing in the kind of the deep community engagement that's needed to co-design and co-produce solutions with people. And that's difficult for us to do because of the pressures that we're under. I'm saying that to align ourselves, although I know it's very different pressures for the council. But I think there has to be real investment in working alongside people that actually live in the areas with the different types of deprivation and working out together what those solutions will be. And that takes a long time and it's messy and difficult. But I think we need to do much more of that rather than talking as professionals about what we think should be happening.
Thank you, Holly. Bridget, you had a question?
Thank you, Holly. Thank you for that insight. And I always find the data fascinating and really helpful in the difficult decision-making that we as councillors need to make. And so thank you for your briefing that you did in the past couple of weeks as well to councillors. We are an area that is both urban and very rural. And while I think Citizens Advice has had a hub in Weston-super-Mare, how does your data present in terms of access for rural communities who don't have access to public transport, for example? How are people currently contacting Citizens Advice who do not live close to a centre?
So I can give you a better answer by going and looking at the data and coming back to you. But I can give you a brief example from Pill, because that's an area where we used to have a face-to-face outreach and we don't at the moment. And what we expected was by taking away our face-to-face support there, we might see a drop in the number of clients that we were assisting. And what we've seen is actually a shift in particular to email and people accessing our advice that way. I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but I can absolutely get some data to you that answers it better.
Thank you, Holly. I would just like to say myself a big thank you to your organisation, not just for what you have presented to us tonight, which I think was very informative, and, you know, really, we need to understand so much more, and there was a lot of depth to that I think we can really sort of look at. But also, you know, I have brought residents to you in great distress, and they have left your, you know, after speaking to one of your members, knowing that there was a way forward for them. And it really, you could see the difference it made. And so long may your organisation continue. I just would, you know, don't always have a chance to say thank you, do you? Is there anybody else who would like to, yes, Kieran.
I'm obviously asking a question that I know the answer to, but I think it's for where I work. But I think it's probably useful context for local members. Are there certain types of inquiries or issues, as we call them in the trade, that you are seeing more of now than before? What, debt, energy debt? What are you seeing on the ground?
I mean, overwhelmingly, the largest issue that we see is personal independence payment. And yeah, that is, you know, a disability payment for people, whether they're in work or not. So that is overwhelmingly the highest issue that we see. Again, the cost of living dashboard that I will send all of you tomorrow has a real breakdown going back to 2014. So you can see over time how the issues have changed and kind of dig into that data. So I'll make sure that's shared.
Thomas, you've got a question.
Yeah, I mean, the data seeing it on a map is absolutely fascinating, but it is so important to remember that these are people that are living their lives here, and you know, as a council, we still, as much as we are trying, we're still not delivering enough for these people to get their lives better. Of the 7 indicating factors to present these maps, what would you say is the one to prioritise if you had to choose one?
Oh, that's difficult. I mean, probably income, I would say. I don't know if that's within the council's power to do much about it. So thinking about that, perhaps the living environment, which focuses on housing conditions and energy efficiency, because that really is very connected to income also.
Thank you, Tom. Helen?
Yeah, thanks, Holly, for a really brilliant presentation. And, you know, as Bridget said earlier, we attended the one you did a few weeks ago for us. There's been, in the news this week, there's a rumour that the Chancellor's going to lift the 2-child benefit cap. Are you doing any work on that and what the impact might be of that, or are you waiting till it actually happens?
Waiting and hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of our big asks for the autumn budget, lifting that cap and increasing the rate of local housing allowance, which would make an enormous difference to people as well. So yeah, waiting and hoping at this point.
Thank you. I think we're all hoping to. Are there any other questions for Holly? Well, all I can do, Holly, is to thank you very much for coming to address us. I think we've all found it incredibly interesting, and, you know, well done for the presentation and all you do on a day-to-day basis. And we look forward to seeing what you're going to send us tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Holly.
Thanks for having me.
And now standing orders are to be resumed. And item 11 then, leaders' announcements. Over to Mike.
I'm afraid I have actually got some this time, so apologies, everyone. Firstly, following the shocking and horrific terrorist attack at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester last month, I first of all, of course, want to express our thoughts and support to the families of those who lost their lives, were injured or affected. But also, it felt like an important moment to just remind colleagues that back in December 2019, the Council did adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, and we included it in our hate crime strategy. By endorsing that definition, we continue to affirm our commitment to ensuring that North Somerset embraces difference, where everyone can live, work, study and visit in safety, with respect and free from the harmful effects of prejudice. This definition serves as a valuable tool in helping us identify anti-Semitic incidents and ensure that our policies, practices and culture promote inclusion, respect and safety for all. I will circulate the Alliance's definition in full, which includes some examples of how anti-Semitism can be displayed in public life, the media and the workplace for members' benefit. This is something that the government is keen all local authorities around the country reiterate and emphasise, and I'm pleased to take the opportunity to do that on behalf of North Somerset. Secondly, I want to just confirm a change in the Cabinet membership from the 1st of December. So as has already been notified to members via email, from the 1st of December, Councillor Hugh Mallion will replace Councillor Hannah Young as the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport. Hannah is standing down from Cabinet for personal reasons, and I would like to, although she's not here tonight, I would like to thank her for her hard work and dedication in the role since 2023, and we look forward to welcoming Hugh into the Cabinet from December and working with him going forward. And then lastly, as Hugh is coming into the Cabinet, I'd like to ask Council to support a change in the chair of the Planning and Regulatory Committee, with the current Vice Chair, Councillor Robert Payne, taking over as Chair from Hugh following the December P&R meeting. So I think we probably will need to just take a vote to indicate support on that chairmanship change. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Well, before I wish them luck in their new roles, let's have a vote to make sure that we do approve it. So, first of all, should we do it separately, I think?
It's only the P&R one.
Oh, it's just, okay, just the P&R one. Okay. So, can we have a show of hands then for our new chair of P&R?
That's carried.
And that's carried. Good luck. Well done. Thank you. Okay, so over to question time, or on to question time, our favourite time, obviously. Few hands going up. We'll record your hands. Ian. Is it Helen? Helen, yes, Helen. Ian Parker.
Thank you.
So Tom and Dan and Jess. Helen, we've got. Yeah, Helen, we've got you.
Oh, and Michael at the back as well.
Oh yeah, Michael Pratt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just double check when you go through them, all right?
Oh, are they there?
Door doesn't want any more.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll start with Helen, shall we? Or Joe? Let's start with Joe. We'll get help from him.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've got all the names now. When we get to the end, we've missed anybody off, do feel free to tell us. Let's start off with Joe. We haven't heard your voice today, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm following up the speeches by the chairs of two of the parishes in my ward on the proposed closure of Winscombe Library. And I guess in the absence of Mike Solomon, this is probably going to the leader. They talked about the proposed closure of Winscombe Library. To be more accurate, we're talking about the defunding by North Somerset of the library in the hope that the parish would step into the breach. As you've already heard, the people in the ward came forward in really very significant numbers to tell us how much they value the library. My point of view at the outset of the whole thing was that North Somerset needs to save the money, and I voted along with most of the rest of us to save that £433,000 over the next 2 years, and that it wouldn't make much difference whether the library is run by and funded by us or by the parish council. Having heard what's been said over the few months of the consultation period, I no longer believe that. I think it's really quite important that we should carry on funding that library and, of course, the others. My colleague Jenna and I are proposing an option D to the consultation, which went out with 3 options, where the pain of saving that money is spread rather more evenly over the library service. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with the officer in charge of the consultation. Can I ask the leader if the question of how the money can be saved is still open in any way? I know the consultation has closed.
So, I mean, the answer is absolutely yes. So we've obviously gone through a consultation process. We've set out the options as we see them. We're now assessing the feedback that we've had from residents, from stakeholders, including parish councils and members. As part of that process of assessing options, that includes other proposals that might have come forward, including the suggestions from yourself and Jenna, Councillor Ho-Maris. So, yeah, we're absolutely open to considering options, and the decision-making pathway is that the final decision will be made in February for implementation. So we have got time in that period to look at other options. What I would say is that we're still in a situation where we need to save the total sum from the budget. And we do need to focus on what is realistic, what can be achieved within the time frame, and will help us to secure those savings. So what I would encourage anybody, including, and we will of course formally respond to the two speakers from the parish councils, I would absolutely encourage them to work constructively with us about solutions that can help us to achieve the savings targets that we need to, but also protect services as much as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All hope is not lost. Helen.
Thanks, Chair. This is for Councillor Mike Solomon, who I think is online, but I'm not really expecting an answer today in many ways, and I did make him aware of this question a week or so ago. So can I have it recorded anyway, even if I don't get an answer? So basically, it refers to the statement in late September from Claire Moody and the leaders of the 5 neighbouring local authorities, including our own, which was issued in regard to the increase in hate crime across Avon and Somerset. And the Chief Constable also noted that anxiety in racially minoritised communities has been growing. So I just want to ask the Cabinet member if he can provide councillors with the statistics for recorded hate crimes in North Somerset over the last few years, so we can see whether or not these are changing in line with that statement. And I'd also like an outline of what he is doing to make particularly our black and minority ethnic communities feel safe. So I know he's online, but I'm not really expecting an answer tonight.
Thank you, Helen. Mike is online and he will give you a quick answer.
Hi, Helen. Yes, I was expecting this question, and I have been in touch with officers to pull together all the figures for us, which they're just finally formulating to show the exact figures for the hate crimes that we're seeing and any increases and what type of hate crimes they are, so that we can see what's being impacted. A lot of the hate crimes can be, say, a bucket of crimes where there's one particular event where there can be a lot of hate crimes associated to that one particular thing. So those are figures that will show up. And I will be meeting with officers to look at ways forward as to what we should be doing differently and what we can be doing better, Helen. And I will liaise with you along those lines.
Thanks very much for that, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Ian Parker.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Ho-Maris, and it is, what will the impact be locally and on the council of the Renters' Rights Act, which, as it says on the tin, gives renters more rights, including creating assured tenancies, banning no-fault evictions, and restricting rent increases to once a year? Also, and in regard to AWAB's law, how are we working with social landlords in North Somerset? And in that regard, I would have a particular interest in Alliance Homes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parker, for your question. I agree with you that these are two very important new developments in the legislation to support a more even playing field in the rights of tenants as compared with landlords. And I really welcome the certainty that they bring. So AWAB's law, you asked second, but I'll deal with first. This came into force on the 27th of October. I'm about to send out some information to all councillors about it in terms of what the council's doing in how we respond to residents. But the main points, and it's a very complicated, well, this is complicated, and then the renters' rights has even more things in it. But in short, we really want because we don't own our own council housing, we really need to inform residents of the best way to directly approach the social housing landlords about any hazards that are in their property. And I think the role that the council has is to be really clear about what are the hazards that are actionable. So it's quite complicated, but there's emergency hazards and there's also significant hazards, and damp and mold are very much considered significant hazards, which can also be emergency hazards. And an emergency hazard for the first time has to be actioned within 24 hours of them being notified. So I think it's really important, even though we're not taking on the responsibility where we don't own the housing, but we have to inform our residents who come to us in a state of, shock and fear and concern and worry. This is what your rights are, and this is what you should expect, and this is the timeline that you should expect from the social housing provider, including Alliance Homes. So that's one aspect of it. And I think there's another part of that, which is the way that we, as a council, work with the social housing providers to make sure we are on the same page, we're telling everybody the same thing, and to make sure this process goes as smoothly as possible. So I look forward to, I'll keep you in touch and I will send out an update on that. On the Renters' Rights Act, that has passed, but it hasn't come into force. And I understand that that won't come into force until sometime next year. We don't know exactly when. The key part of it is Section 21, no-fault eviction. So that will be removed as a ground for eviction. There are some specific grounds to evict a tenant, but a number of specific grounds still. And you will, in some cases, have to go to court to do that. So there's a lot of changes on the scene. I've asked officers for a thorough briefing that to be made, an all-council briefing, as I think this affects many of us. It's what a lot of our residents come back to ask us about. So I can't tell you what the impacts are, but I can say that I have really, I'm working with officers, and we've made it. I think it's important that it's a cross-council action as well, through communication, through housing, through social care, to understand what are the impacts and make sure we're communicating it clearly and also without blame. I think it's just got to be very clear and a matter of fact. This is the change, so what are we going to do? But thank you very much for your interest in your question.
Thank you, Jenna. Councillor Thomas, you've got a question? Dan?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was enjoying the answer so much that I forgot I asked a question. Question to Councillor Caniford, I believe, but correct me if I'm wrong. Congsbury and the communities near and along the main airport access corridors are being blighted by problem parking. Drives and pavements are being blocked and access to local businesses are hampered. The issue is further exacerbated by meet and greet services, taking cars from passengers, then dumping them on residential streets. The airport parking strategy is due for renewal in the next few months. Can I ask that councillors in the villages near the airport are consulted and a solution is sought to alleviate this issue blighting North Somerset?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure if it is mine, but I'm going to do it anyway, based on the fact that I don't disagree with you at all and has been a long-standing problem. I think this is something that Hugh and I'll pick up as highways, and the airport has in the past funded some enforcement. But with the new strategy, I think we do need to push that a little harder, simply because we are all aware that with the cost of parking at the airport, people are simply looking for cheaper and cheaper options, and by doing so are blighting our local residents. So yes, more than happy to also, once we've got that strategy moving forward with the airport, to include local members to be part of that, certainly for the discussion, because they'll know on the ground where the problem parts are and where the issues are. And I know we're also having those issues in our own car parks in and around Backwell quite clearly. So, yeah, I'll engage with that when it comes on board, or I'm sure Hugh will pick that up with me.
Thank you. I thought it was slightly harsh of asking the question to Hugh before it's in place. But thank you very much.
Now, a first problem for you to solve. Right, Councillor Coles, have you got Jenna?
Yep, so this is a question for Councillor Waite. I'd like to know if there's a bit of an update on the red bag situation, please.
No problem at all. I know that you will probably all be aware of the fact that we have been having some problems with our red bags that we ordered last year. So it's a very strange thing, these red bags. The trial lot of bags that we ordered actually were fine. And I know even some of our cabinet members who got the original trial bags, their bags are still in perfect condition. We subsequently ordered the bags for everybody, and there is a distinct problem with them. So some of them, some of the red bags are fading, some of them are fading and failing. They're literally falling apart at the seams. So we are having extensive discussions with the supplier. We're not happy at all. And over the last, in fact, in last week, our team has been going out and doing a test to walk around their areas on a day-by-day basis and checking 2,000 bags and literally ticking them off and seeing what percentage of them are fading and what percentage are failing. This is part of our agreement with the supplier that we're doing this test, and so there is an ongoing discussion about how we're going to sort this out on a financial basis. It is a very reputable firm. There are only 2 firms in the UK that do the bags that we are using, and they are being used by so many different councils. We know that we're not the only council that has a problem. We also know of other councils who are looking to buy from them at the moment, so it's quite a hot topic in the business at the moment. But we will be we would hope to feed back to you at our next full council meeting to let you know how we've dealt with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annemieke. I know by trying to improve something, we've seemed to have made things a little bit worse, and it's so unfortunate because people worked really hard to try and make things better. So I feel very sorry that this has happened. Councillor Petty, you have a question?
Thank you. My question is for the leader, for Councillor Bell. Greens have growing concerns following Rachel Reeves's non-statement last week and the so-called fairer funding proposals, which would cut our funding by nearly 20%, with 17.4 million less for our local services, as you published last month. This fair funding is anything but. This cutting corner approach is disproportionately impacting councils like us. Have you heard back from the letter that you wrote to the Chancellor or from our local Labour MPs regarding this situation? But equally, could I also ask for some budget briefings, that some budget briefings are put in the diary for all councillors before the new year, given the cliff edge that we face? And that last year we would have had more briefings in the diary by now, and I'm just aware of that gap. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Bridget. I mean, apart from the bit where you mentioned the Green Party, I agree with everything that you just said. I have heard of you, so that's a good start, isn't it? But no, I mean, without wanting to be flippant, I completely agree with the point that you're making. We get fed up of having the same conversations, don't we? Because every year we say that we get the information later and later in the process, and every year it seems to come later still. We were promised that the information about the so-called fair funding review would be published last week. It wasn't. It's now delayed, we believe, until the end of November. And as you rightly say, our expectation is that that's going to rip something like £17 million from our base budget. So it doesn't feel very fair for North Somerset. We then have to wait still further until we get the settlement announced again, probably in the week before Christmas. So an extremely difficult situation, and at the same time officers are supposed to plan for the long term of this authority and the services we provide. And that's before we mention that we don't have clarity about the schools white paper and the impacts on SEND services, or certainty about what's going to happen with the dedicated schools grant deficit that's affecting councils all around the country, or a plan to tackle the winter pressures that we face in social care. You know, the list goes on. So every step forward that is taken, it feels as though two are taken back. We're working really hard to try and get to a position where we've got some budget proposals that we can bring forward. We will be putting in place a consultation process for residents and stakeholders and briefings for members. They'll start to appear in diaries during December. But we're still caught in this position that it's really difficult to brief when we're not in possession of all the information. We certainly hope that the Chancellor's statement and then the fair funding review announcement will give us some clarity. You asked specifically about the letter to the Chancellor. I wish I could find it because I could read it word for word, but it was a one-line reply that said, "Thank you very much for your feedback," and that was it. And I've not had any direct communication from our MPs in response, although I know within the constraints of political parties, they are trying to be supportive in making representations to the government on our behalf.
Thank you, Mike. Kieran, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. My question's to Cabinet Member Highways, who isn't here, so I'll ask it to the Leader of the Council, but I'm quite content with the written response. There's no point in trying to answer a very specific ward question. So the recent night closures around the A370 and airport roundabout caused significant impacts for some residents around Western Village. Despite Western Village not being the signposted diversion route, cars drove through it, it was fairly gridlocked, some drove over pavements and even a fight broke out. So I wonder if more could have been done at the design stage, particularly around closing one side of the road rather than all of it at the same time, or the use of traffic marshals, whichever. So my question really is, will North Somerset Council review what happened here and identify if they can change the approach or if there's lessons that can be implemented in the future to prevent something like this happening again, because it was pretty significant?
Yeah, thanks, Kieran, and I'm happy to answer that in Hannah's absence. It's an issue that I was aware of too, and so just specifically on the A370 works, we brought forward the essential maintenance works on the A370 so that it didn't coincide with the closure of the Winterstoke Road Bridge, which is obviously coming up very soon, and I'm afraid that will affect your residents as well, as we were obviously trying to mitigate and manage the impacts on the community as much as possible. The work was done principally overnight. There were good diversions in place, but unfortunately what we can't always control is what the sat-navs and what the driver behaviour looks like on the ground. What I would say is that I think the cumulative impact of some of the roadworks that we've had in recent months, most of which were not council roadworks, by the way, but were by utilities and broadband providers and others, I think we haven't got it quite right, and it has been difficult. So I have asked officers to look at how we permit multiple schemes so that we can do better to mitigate the impacts where several works are necessary at once. Look again at the traffic management plans, exactly as you described, and particularly supervision on site, so that where work is carried out, we can respond flexibly if the circumstances change. I think in terms of Western Village, that's exactly, it didn't work the way we thought it would, and we should have been better at responding to that. And I think also that leads into real-time information and signage so that we get that improved on site as well. So officers and the team are looking at how we can do that better. And look at what we can strengthen, but it's really helpful to have feedback from our residents and members about specifics that don't work out so that we can try and learn and improve going forward.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Luke Smith.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question to the Leader. Now, I appreciate that he's got a large cabinet for political balance reasons, but with the new cabinet, 2/3 of these members will be based in Weston-super-Mare, and residents may be concerned about a top-heavy decision-making system, especially when they look at the member for spatial planning, whose portfolio doesn't actually include spatial planning anymore. So what assurances can the Leader give me about the north of our district's position in cabinet decision-making?
Well, I mean, part of your question I didn't really understand, Luke, because I can assure you that the Cabinet member for planning absolutely has responsibility for planning, but so maybe you just need to read the list again. I mean, I think the only real solution, being candid, is for some of the areas in the north to elect better people, isn't it? And then it would be easier for any leader of any political persuasion to pick the strongest possible team. What is important for North Somerset is that we have got a very strong and united cross-party cabinet that gets things done and makes a difference. We have got a strong record of delivery since 2019. We'll carry on doing that. We act in the interests of the whole of North Somerset, not just some bits of it. And I would encourage those colleagues who seem particularly enthusiastic about coming and supporting their own little patch to also think about the needs of the entire district and our entire population, because that's what we're elected for.
If I could, I'd offer some candid advice to the leader that aren't you in a coalition? So if you want a better stock of members, that applies to your colleagues. And listed on the formal cabinet positions, it's still Councillor Caniford, whose title reflects the member for spatial planning, which he's no longer responsible for. It was in the forward plan, in the briefing sheet above that for this meeting. And that's me.
Well, I stand corrected. If the correct cabinet job titles haven't made their way onto the forward plan, I apologise, and I will haul Nick and Democratic Services over the coals to get that sorted out. And as always, Luke, I really appreciate your feedback and the constructive conversations that we have. And let's keep it up for the next, we've got 18 months more to go, so it'll be great fun, won't it?
Thank you very much. I don't know about fun, but we'll do our best. Councillor Pryke, I think you're the last person who wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Caniford. When this administration was formed, it promised to be a listening council. If this is the case, why would a council order items related to the outcome of a consultation before that consultation was launched?
So, as you're aware, we have received 2 legal challenges regarding the parking, which I think you're referring to. So at this stage, I'm not in a position to discuss those challenges, as we have not received written responses yet. Therefore, we do not know what those responses will be, and so I'm unable to indicate any next steps or any discussion regarding the parking proposals. So I can't really do anything because of the legal position.
Thank you, Mark. I would just like to remind everybody, though, who asked a question to supply the question to the clerk with a note of their question. Sorry, let's read it. Supply the clerk with a note of their question so that it can be included correctly in the minutes. That's quite important. I think we got everybody's names. I'm hoping that everybody who wanted to ask a question has asked it and had their answer. And good answers they were, I thought, in some cases. Not necessarily all, but right, okay. Motions by members, I have none today, so nothing to discuss there. So on to item 14, reports and matters referred from other committees other than those dealt with elsewhere on the agenda, and our first one is from the Audit Commission, which is Councillor Patrick Heaton.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm pleased to present the Audit Committee's annual report for the preceding year. I think Audit Committee is sometimes under-attended by fellow councillors, but I would like to assure you it is one of the most interesting and fascinating committees that we have, given the breadth of things that we're looking at. And over the last year, the committee has sought to provide cross-party assurance on the Council's governance, risk management and financial controls. We have continued to contribute to driving transparency and accountability through reviewing the Council's Statement of Accounts, the Annual Governance Statement, and scrutinising both internal and external audit activity to ensure robust financial oversight, which I think is particularly important given the challenges that the Council is currently facing from a financial point of view. Alongside the financial piece, we're monitoring key risks, including quite a bit of work and scrutiny on cybersecurity and ICT issues. We've also debated in our group key constitutional changes, and our work is ensuring that the Council is well prepared to manage both operational and strategic challenges. An important development in recent months is undertaking an assessment together with SIPFA to further evaluate our effectiveness. That evaluation was quite positive. It's showing that we are doing the right things, but again, there is still more to be done, and that work with SIPFA will help us plan out our activities in the months and years to come. Looking ahead to the year to come, our work plan will continue to focus on financial governance, increasing focus on risk management, but also looking to provide assurance and accountability around the transformation process and our work against those recommendations from SIPFA. I'd like to thank my fellow committee members. Again, a very consensual, cross-party group of councillors who all contribute effectively to our work, but also to give some thanks to our external independent members who are providing us with expert insights from their professional roles as accountants and auditors. And finally, I'd like to thank our officer team who have provided us with excellent support over the previous year with diligence and professionalism. So I commend the report to you. I'm sure you've all read it in great detail, and very happy to welcome you to our next meeting, which will be coming up in a few weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for the recommendation? Yeah, Joe. So, has anyone got any comments or yes? Who's Luke? Luke, is it?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, but under section 3D subclause 2, oversight and transparency of capital projects is considered a significant issue. Could you just elaborate on the committee's plans to look into this as an issue?
That is a very specific question. But yes, Treasury management and capital management is one of the key issues we're looking at. We receive reports at each meeting in quite some depth from our officer team. We scrutinise and challenge those presentations. It's also an area where external audit are looking to dig in, and we continue to be assured that the work done by the officer team in that area is accurate. But as you say, it's an important issue to continue to challenge. And as I said, again, very welcome for other members to come and join our meetings and ask those questions in person.
Thank you. We've all been invited, so let's hope a few people do come along. Are there any other things, any other questions or queries or comments? No? So shall we just take a vote then? Are we all accepting the report and its recommended? Well, there's not really recommendations in it, really, is there? But we accept the report, so hands up those who do. Thank you. And the second item under this item agenda, the licensing committee. Councillor Crockford-Hallwood, I saw him somewhere. Right over there.
Here, Chairman. Thank you. Brevity is my watchword. We got through the meeting in quarter of an hour. I offer you the report now, and hopefully we'll get through it in a number of seconds.
Oh, I don't know. Has anybody... well, we need a seconder first. So, Tom, okay, we've got a few seconders, so that's fine. Are there any comments? Yes, Helen.
Yeah, sorry, John, I have got a question on it. So, in the section on fundamental principles, 1.8.2, there's a reference to the Equality Act 2010. And, but my question really is about how can we ensure applicants do not discriminate against any of the 9 protected characteristics covered by the Equality Act, and not just disability, which is the one mentioned here. And when I was reading this, I was particularly thinking about when Katie Hopkins performed on the Grand Pier. I think it was last year. I took part in a demonstration against her, and she's someone who's previously used hate speech and expressed racist views, and in my opinion should not have been allowed to perform in Weston on those grounds. And I know the leader of the council wrote to the Pier expressing his concerns, but the event still went ahead. So the simple question is, can we use the Equality Act and, you know, not just the one protected characteristic of disability, but all the protected characteristics when we are granting licenses for particular events to go ahead. And, you know, the Playhouse has got a history of having some, shall we say, slightly dodgy comedians playing there as well. Anyway, that's my question.
Do we have an answer for that?
Well, I would be reluctant to make comments on any performer or performance which is within the law, and what you consider entertaining, somebody else might not consider entertaining, and I'm reluctant to join a conversation on that in this meeting. If there are any specific answers you want to specific points of law, might I ask the officers to give you that response rather than you getting a response from an amateur, such as the chairman of a committee?
Yeah, these are sensitive issues. Mike, what would you like to say?
So I was just going to say that I think it's important not to misunderstand what the Statement of Principles refers to. So the Statement of Principles does state that about the Equality Act and protected characteristics, and it emphasises the point about unlawful discrimination and harassment and victimisation and so on. Then there is then a separate point which underlines that we expect applicants to give due consideration to disabled persons in respect of access and egress. So what I would seek to assure you, Helen, is that actually the statement does say the Equality Act and the protected characteristics. I think the point about the disabled people, which is referred to, is a secondary point that supplements that. So I think it does give us more levers. I think where it gets problematic, of course, and this was the issue that we certainly had with the Katie Hopkins, is how do you predetermine that something is going to be discriminative in an unlawful way? That's quite difficult, isn't it?
Thanks for that clarification. Terry?
Yeah, thank you. It's only a simple one, John. Back some time ago, I raised some concern about the licensing of taxis because we found that a lot were being rejected in Weston to get the license, and they were being done in Wolverhampton where they were actually authorising thousands of them. Now, the concern was that obviously if they failed as an examination with us, you know, are we in the position of using those taxis to carry some of the children on the school runs as well, which is what I was raised when a person raised it with me. I don't know what the position is. I did understand that we were moving away from that, but I just wondered if there was any update on it, that was all.
I think that's a position we continue to look at with close interest, and we'll give you the latest situation report on that. We all know that Wolverhampton seems to be a great place for issuing licenses. Perhaps people in Wolverhampton need more taxis than people in the rest of the kingdom. I don't know.
The main concerned was about, you know, putting children in our care in those taxis, and you know, I did suggest that we ought to be making sure all the ones we use are ones that we license rather than ones from Wolverhampton where we don't know how adequate the licensing is.
I think once again I'm reluctant to make a generalised comment about taxi drivers from Wolverhampton. I think that would be unfortunate, but if there are any specific issues, I think then we'll get the answers from the clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Petty, you've got another question?
Thank you. John, I'm happy for you to take this one away. Given what Helen asked and our concern around increases in hate crime, but also given that North Somerset Council has declared and voted to be an anti-racism council and to work towards eradicating racism, could I ask you to check with officers whether they are confident that this work and this document reflects that commitment to eradicating racism? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Right, so with that thought, shall we go to the vote and move the recommendations that are included in this document? Hands up those who approve. Thank you. And that's carried. And over to item 15, the corporate parenting report, which again I think is very interesting. Over to Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, I'll normally say I'll be very brief, but I will say a few words about this report simply because I hope you're all aware that it is National Care Leavers Month this month, which I think is important for all of us to remember that care leavers are not some niche group. They are our children, and we are the parent. And for that reason, I'm quite proud to be able to present this report again to Council. And bearing that in mind, I think we have to think very carefully about care experienced young people and remember that they deserve the same hopes, chances, and belief in the future that we would want for our own children, and we need to make sure that our systems and our decisions show that. So you'll have read in the report that we meet, obviously, with our young people regularly, and in the September panel we had 5 of our care experienced people visit us to talk to us with very honest feedback. They had liaised with other members of their group and came to us with some tough questions. They did welcome a lot of what we've done with help with driving lessons, but they did question whether our emergency payments are set at the right level, and they encouraged us to keep moving towards a more sustainable, less crisis-driven approach to support. They also highlighted inconsistencies in simple but important things like getting birthday cards, birthday payments, or a first hello from a new personal advisor. We also heard some mixed feedback about the course that they need to take in order to qualify for Band A housing, in the sense that we got the message that the way that this is handled and the different levels of support for different learning needs and styles has to be addressed. And at that meeting, I agreed to work with other elected members, that's all of you, to explore how we can draw on your skills and experience from across the council to support care leavers with all sorts of issues, particularly budgeting or other advice that they might like, because, you know, we are corporate parents. We also, as you see in the report, had a visit from Mark Riddell at the end of September and the start of October. He's the National Implementation Advisor for care leavers, and he met with me, with the leader, with senior officers. Overall, the feedback was positive from him. He recognised that we are broadly offering a good service, but he did notice that there are areas for improvement and development. And these include strengthening the influence of the corporate parenting panel itself and all of you as corporate parents to embed a stronger whole council approach to corporate parenting. You'll probably have seen that our outcomes are strong. You know, the 65% of care leavers are in education, employment or training, which is above the national average. 93% are in suitable accommodation, again, above the national average. And we are in touch with 94% of our care leavers, which is slightly lower than the national average. So overall, we're performing well in outcomes that matter most. But we must continue to act on young people's feedback and keep improving. So I don't know how many of you looked and clicked on the link to Mark Riddell's blog, which was written in 2022, but it's still very relevant, I think. So I just thought I'd share a few reflections that I had on reading that blog again. And I think the main takeaway I have is that it emphasizes so clearly how much a young person's future can change because one adult sticks by them, is on their side. And I think we heard that when we attended a talk by Ashley John Baptiste and read his book. He makes exactly the same point, that one individual can change a life. And if that's true, that means that for us, corporate parenting isn't just about forms and systems. It's about the people we put around the young people. And he highlighted 6 very practical principles that we can use to guide our work. Obviously, the first one we all know is you have to ask the same question every time. Would this be good enough for my own child? And when we think about that, we should think about that in terms of housing decisions, financial support, or whatever. We should never settle for second best for our children. We have to invest in relationships, not just tasks. As we said, young people need adults who stay. Keep workers with them longer, reduce staff changes if we can. But that important adult doesn't have to be a social worker or a member of staff. It could be a teacher, it could be somebody, it could be a friend, it could be one of you. anybody can become a go-to adult for a young person. The other thing that's important is to bring support into the team. Don't send young people everywhere. So, have a housing worker in the team. Have DWP brought into the team to focus on training and not just benefits. And try and embed mental health support so that it's within the team for care leavers, and remove long waiting lists if we can. But going back to that, one key person, identify the adult who won't disappear. It could be a PA, it could be a foster carer, a teacher or a mentor. The title doesn't matter. What matters is that they're there for the young person and they stay. The other key thing he says, and I remember him saying this to me when I first met him, is that when we speak to young people, we have to speak about hope, not labels. We have to focus on strengths, not problems, and set goals that are ambitious, not just meet minimum standards. Talk to them about who they can become when you talk to young people. And finally, to remove all those everyday barriers so that don't let 18 be a drop-off cliff edge moment. Help make rent deposits quick, mental health support fast, and avoid making young people retell painful stories again and again to multiple people. So basically, I'm just reminding you once again that corporate parenting is about helping young people to become the people they should be and can be, and make sure that they have adults who can fight and stay in their corner throughout their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. You know how I feel, but I just imagine myself at that age. It's such a difficult age, isn't it? You're just starting adulthood, and imagine that without the support of our families. And we are that family, and I really hope that we can do more perhaps than we're doing already. But I know that those of you who really are working hard are really doing a great deal on behalf of us all. So thank you very much. Right, with that thought, item 16, over to Councillor Waite and the Climate Emergency Action Plan update. Annemieke.
Thank you, Chair. It seems fitting, I think, that we present our annual update on the Climate Emergency Strategy and Action Plan in the same week that COP30 begins in Brazil. At a time of increasing global polarization, I think it's never been more important to reaffirm our commitment to addressing the climate emergency. The actions we take locally play a vital role in contributing to global efforts to reduce emissions and build resilience, helping to safeguard the health and well-being of future generations. The report before us is for Council to note. That means there's no decision required tonight. However, it is an important moment to reflect on both our progress and the challenges ahead in our ambition to become a net zero council and area by 2030. Across the Council's own estate and activities, overall emissions remain well below the 2018-19 baseline, although they have risen slightly compared with last year. The rise is largely due to fuel use within the waste fleet. This partly reflects the work involved in distributing the wonderful red waste bags that I mentioned earlier, in preparation of the full rollout of the 3 weekly residual waste collections, as well as other supporting activities during that time. The increase is also the result of an increased waste fleet hire due to our very old vehicles breaking down. We believe, therefore, that this rise in emissions is a temporary blip, and we will work with NSEC to reduce operational emissions in the future. We've also seen increases in some contracted services, but on the other hand, we've seen strong reductions in energy use from our buildings and street lighting. There's also been a rise in home-to-school transport emissions driven by increasing demand for the service, sometimes I know members are acutely aware of. Projects like Hutton Moor were funded by the government's public sector decarbonisation scheme. This scheme has now been terminated and it is yet to be replaced by the government. This means that any other large-scale projects will have to be on hold until such time. Across the wider area of North Somerset, emissions have fallen by more than 550 kilotons since 2005. The area emissions are calculated by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, and their most recent national data shows a small rise for North Somerset District, including an unexplained increase in commercial emissions. This has really surprised us, and we have queried it with the department, but we're still waiting for a response. Meanwhile, we have seen strong progress across many projects, and I would like to just pick out a few across the different priorities. Hutton Moor Leisure Centre, which I mentioned earlier, is a 2.3 million investment, which will cut 300 tonnes of carbon annually and lowering bills. The Solar Together scheme, where North Somerset leads the region yet again for new home installations, will lower people's energy bills. Our 24 new electric buses that now operate on the X1 and X4 routes are improving our air quality as they go. The passive house development in Nailsea, I was delighted to visit a few weeks ago alongside some of my colleagues. It was wonderful to hear firsthand from residents how pleased they are, not just with their beautiful warm homes, but also with their equally low energy bills. The large-scale renewable energy feasibility study on council-owned land in Weston-super-Mare is funded through Innovate's UK Mission Net Zero, and this will inform our future solar and renewable projects. And partnering in the Western Forest project will create a vast regional woodland network to capture carbon and enhance biodiversity. And then finally, in terms of our projects, I'd like to point out the Warm Homes Local Grant, which has just launched and which will support residents to improve the energy efficiency of their homes and reduce their heating costs. I'm thinking back, Chair, to the presentation that we saw earlier about deprivation and fuel poverty. It's very clear to see how important these actions, particularly things like the Warm Homes Local Grant, are, and the difference that this can make to our people's lives. Other projects are still in preparation and will lay the groundwork for future larger scale actions, such as the various decarbonisation studies, including the Town Hall and the Strode and Scotchhorn leisure centres, which will reduce energy consumption and costs. The planning for the new depot, which will facilitate electrification of our new waste fleet, and which in turn will cut fuel costs and improve air quality. And then ensuring that our local plan contains all the necessary policies to support net zero homes, nature protection and sustainable transport infrastructure in future developments. These preparations are crucial for enabling long-term climate action, even if they are not yet fully reflected in the current project delivery. Now, the report this evening focuses mainly on how we reduce our carbon footprint, but on the other side of that challenge is how we adapt to the changing climate. Flooding, heat waves and coastal erosion are no longer future risks. They are happening right now, and as a district council with so much land below sea level, we take this very seriously. We do have an excellent climate adaptation strategy in place, but delivering the actions identified will require substantial government funding. At present, there is virtually no central funding for climate adaptation beyond the existing support for flood risk management, and to be honest, even that falls far short of what is needed. We're not alone in struggling with this. Councils across the country are ready and willing to deliver climate adaptation projects, but we are all waiting for the funding that will allow us to act at a scale that the situation demands. Now, I started this report by mentioning increased polarisation. It's worth pointing out that research shows that 89% of people worldwide want their governments to do more on climate change and adaptation. Frankly, we should do more, and we could do more, both to cut emissions and to prepare our communities for the realities of climate change. But in order to do that, we need money, and lots of it. Now, from the beginning of this administration, and indeed during the previous one, we've had very high ambitions for North Somerset and for what this council can achieve in tackling climate emergency. However, it's only fair to be honest about the limitations of what we can do. Much of the government investment in creating a green economy, in upskilling future green jobs, and in providing financial support for nature recovery is funneled through the combined mayoral authorities. As a smaller council outside of the West of England Mayoral Authority, we've seen substantial amounts of funding directed at our immediate neighbours, while our access to those same resources have been limited. In addition to this, our climate emergency team is exceptionally small. This means we have to prioritise ruthlessly and focus on projects that deliver the most impact with the resources available. Despite that, we have continued to show leadership, creativity and persistence, making progress where we can, building good partnerships and preparing the groundwork for the bigger steps ahead. I would like to thank the officers for their hard work, not just in preparing this report, but in delivering these projects, collecting and analysing data and keeping the climate emergency strategy moving forward. I hope colleagues will join me in pressing this message to government that council like ours are ready to lead, but that we need the tools and the funding to do so. Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendations that council notes the progress and ongoing work set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Right, I think we all note that, and I would just like to, Bridget.
Hello. Thank you very much. And Amika, I just note that we also have another hand up on the other side. I apologise for last minute, but I would like to ask Councillor Waite if it would be possible, with regards to what she just said and with regards to this report, whether we might add a recommendation that we ask the Cabinet Member for the Climate Emergency to write to the Government to ask for more financial support to commit to funding for adaptation, and also to make more commitments with regard to legislation in decision-making to reduce emissions from fossil fuels. This would all be compatible with work that we have previously done and with letters we have previously written to government asking for action on climate change, and would be in line with the commitments that this organisation has made. It would probably be a question to Councillor Waite, but also to the officer, Nick Brain, to confirm whether that would be possible.
Chairperson, the Cabinet Member is at liberty to do so anyway within her portfolio, so if Council just signifies its support, you don't need a formal recommendation and vote.
Thank you. In that case, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. And Councillor Thornton? Helen?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's, as you know, one of my hobby horses, bringing services back in-house. And when I was reading this, and I think you refer at one point that you only managed, I say you only managed, that only 2 out of the 4 highways contractors actually provided any information. And it made me wonder, do we have any enforcement powers over them in terms of, you know, them to provide the information and also to reduce the emissions? And on that note, also connected to it, what are we doing to look at how we can reduce Scope 3 emissions from our contracts with for home to school transport, Glendale and our highways contracts generally? Because my view is if we had more control over those contracts, i.e. we were doing, you know, we're providing all that stuff ourselves, we'd have more control over them to do all the stuff we want them to do.
Thank you. I'd be happy to come back to you on that one. I absolutely agree with what it is you're saying. I think that while we don't have all the data at the moment from those contracts, it's worth pointing out that we have only last year changed to this new setup where those contracts have been divided into 4 smaller ones. So it's a little bit of, you know, first time round, and we're not quite happy with how fast we're getting that information. We're absolutely intending to make sure that we do so. It's a really worthwhile point about how much control we have over emissions, and I suspect that that is something that we'll want to take away and have a discussion with officers, but I'm happy to come back to you about that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Tom, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just thought that while we were talking about the climate, it would be a good opportunity to mention that during our last Cape panel, there was the discussion around the environmental agency pulling out huge amounts of funding towards I was just wondering, you know, I'm concerned about it. I presume you're concerned about it. As a council, should we be concerned about it? Because by the sounds of it, it could be possibly tens of millions of pounds of funding that we're not going to receive.
Yes, I think the funding from the Environment Agency either for revenue or capital is very problematic at the moment. I know that the funding has been cut again, and in the long term this is going to be a huge issue for us, and it is something that I am working on with the officers already. It's worth pointing out that in our previous council meeting, there was a request for us to write to the Environment Agency about the maintenance grants, the maintenance of our rivers and how well that was going to be managed. I have just had an email from the Environment Agency in response, which I've not yet had an opportunity to discuss with the officers, but that will be coming back. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. So with those things we've discussed and letters and all the rest of it, we note that your report. Thank you very much. Okay, item 17, the North Somerset Environmental Company Limited shareholder update from Mark. Councillor Caniford, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, just a report for noting, and I will keep this brief. Just a couple of things I just wanted to highlight in the report, and I'm sure if there's any questions, Amy and myself should be able to sort that. The KPIs are looking good. They're doing what we've asked them to do. They've increased pothole repairs from 21 square metres a day to 37 square metres a day, including an additional gang, but even taking that into account, that is an increase in productivity by the teams. Gullies, 70 gullies being done a day. Turnover's gone up from 13 to 20 million. There are some variances, as you'll see in the report. I think the explanations are very clear. I mean, this year, of course, above inflation pay rises and fleet costs, but they are being brought under control through the deficit recovery strategy. And that's worth picking up on and having a look at if you haven't currently done so. So in terms of the company, I'm comfortable that the direction of travel is positive, and I think council can be comfortable. There are certainly risks as the owner of the company, and I'm sure will be on the audit's risk register. But with the current recovery plan, I'm confident within the period of time, with the 5 to 6 years of that recovery, we will have this totally under control. And let's not forget that we have put this in place to provide the services that our residents want. And just on that, I think it is definitely worth remembering and taking into account that missed collections are down by 35% last year. Recycling rates are up just under 6%, and complaint responses are 14% up. So people aren't being ignored, and we're going in the right direction. So this report's for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Nice to end on a positive note. Right, no more comments, nothing else to add. There are no reports on joint arrangements and external organisations and questions relating thereto, and I have no urgent business. Does anyone else here? So with that, I will bring tonight's meeting to an end. Thank you all for coming. Do everyone avoid the winter flu, which I gather is arriving on our doorsteps, and take care going home. Thank you, everyone.